I'm going to start with a slightly controversial comment, which is, despite the fact that I run a global executive search company and I deal with C-suite all the time, the topic was, what's the view from the C-suite? One of the things I feel quite passionately about is women don't have to be on boards to be successful. I know that there's a huge amount of debate, and it's quite right that we're getting out on platforms to raise the issue about women on boards. Pipeline is absolutely vital. So as far as I'm concerned, the one thing that I really want to talk about today, we could talk about the FTSE 100, we could talk about the FTSE 250 and how many women there are on boards and how the stats are moving. I really don't want to talk about that because I think, one, it's talked about enough, it's turned into a topic, and I'd much rather spend time hopefully sharing some very quick ideas with you, because I know we've only got 10 minutes and there's a little clock down there telling me that I've got to slow down. I'd like to spend some time just giving you some quick thoughts on topics that I talk to people about all the time about what they want to do. I don't care if you want to be a stay-at-home mum. I don't care if you want to be a business leader, the next Richard Branson, a board director, a checkout assistant. It really doesn't matter to me. It matters to you. And therefore, whatever it is you decide you want to do with your life, I want you to just run through this quick exercise. If you're interested in the slides, you can email me and I'll send them back to you so you don't have to jot them all down, because we are going to go through them quite quickly. What's that? This is something that I've used over the last 20 years when I've been talking to people about what they want to do with their lives. So this isn't just about boards. This is about what you want to do with the whole of your life. You know, in terms of making an economic contribution to the world. Richard Branson's mother did that. She didn't do it by working. She did it by having him. So I think, I think we should actually just stop this nonsense about it's about the FTSE 100. It isn't. We all make a contribution. So I want you to think about the following. There is an empowerment cycle you can use for your life that is quite unique to you. And it just works in the angle of your own thoughts, the language that you use about what you want to do, the actions that you take, the habits that then form, which will create the pattern of what you do, the results you achieve, and then you go back to thoughts again. So I'm just going to flick through some quick points on this, just to explain and put some flavour around it. It is a journey. It doesn't stop. But if you start with your own original thoughts, you spend time with yourself deciding what you want to do. It can be anything. It can be setting up your own business. It can be working from home, whatever it is. But they're your original thoughts about what you want to do with your life. Never mind the media, never mind the pressures that you feel elsewhere. You have your own original thoughts. They are your authentic IP. I'll use one example of a lady called Martina King. Martina grew to be very, very successful. She was the chief exec of Yahoo in the UK. And right at that peak of her career, she was 41, I think, she decided to take up a non-exec portfolio. Unbelievable. People were just thought, what has she done? She gave up her executive role and took 3 non-execs. And everyone thought, the usual thing, women helping women. Oh, she's burnt out, or she's given up, or she wasn't successful, couldn't hack it in the boardroom. The reason she did it was because she wanted to stay at home with her kids for part of the time. But she didn't want to drop down into a role that was below a level that she wanted to re-enter. She's just started back as a full-time executive now that she spent the time with the kids. That was what she thought about what she wanted to do with her life, and she made it happen. It's her authentic IP. Don't use language like, what do you think that would look like on my CV? It doesn't matter how your CV looks, as long as you're doing something you want to do and you're happy with what you're doing and you're driven by what you're doing. It creates the basis of your picture for life. It's your contribution and it's your insights. Nobody can repeat your career. But you have to think about it. Don't just go through it with your head down. I know we're busy. I know we've all got plates to spin. If you look at the list of things that I'm involved in, yeah, it's manic. I wouldn't have it any other way. But it's my choice. I'm not doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because I want to. Language is really important. I go to conference. In fact, I'm going to do this now. How many women in the room feel that confidence is an issue for women in business? Okay. How many women in the room think they're useless at their jobs? Okay. So what's the issue with the confidence piece then? I think it's a myth. I really do think it's a myth. I have yet to go into a room full of 20, 50, 100 women and hear silence because people don't have anything to say. That doesn't happen. I think the confidence thing is almost something that, again, is a bandwagon that people join. And they're now using that language. So they're adopting, oh, it's a confidence issue. Really? Well, when you were in a boardroom and I was, so when I get people coming in to see me because they're looking for another job, it's a very different person to the one I go and see when I'm pitching to them for work to give me a job. Suddenly, there are two different people, same person. And they say, it's confidence. So I would say to them, well, why don't you pretend that you were the horrible person that wouldn't get me in your diary 6 months ago, instead of this humble person here going, I need another job and I don't know what I'm doing. And it really is up here. It really is up here. It's about the language that you use and the authenticity that you speak about. I think the other thing, this bit about, don't talk about I. I is selfish. When you're talking about yourself and your achievements, I did this, I did that, I did the other. So people will tell you to do the I bit, or they'll say, don't do the I bit, do the we bit, because if you do the I bit, you're too self-centered, and that's not good. I always say to people, I'm proud of the fact I say this to people. I always say to people, there is a me in team. So there is a quick way that you can succeed in expressing this in a confident way. I have led a team and we have achieved. It's a really simple way of actually covering off what probably you have done from a practical sense and from a reality sense and an authenticity of your leadership. And there's nothing wrong with doing I, as long as you remember that the team's in there somewhere. Strong language, and I don't mean swearing, although I have been known to swearing in a boardroom, but that's only because everyone else was sort of being really coy. And I walked into my first board meeting, 5 accountants and me. Right, all boys except for me, in case you hadn't noticed. And they were all sort of chatting really politely. And they were talking about numbers, and suddenly I could talk in numbers. I understood their language. One key thing I would say to anybody that wants to succeed in a business environment, learn the language of your business. If you're in a business where numbers matter, numbers, 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 numbers. Know the language. Don't sit there and say, and I've heard so many women say this, I'm not very good with numbers. I'm better in marketing. Well, if marketing isn't good with numbers, how could you discuss return on investment and why on earth there should be a business case to do something? You have to be able to understand numbers if you're in a boardroom, or just don't try to get there. If you don't know the language, don't go there. If you want to live in Spain, in somewhere where no one else speaks English and you don't know Spanish, why would you do that? Learn the language. It gives you the license to speak. So this first meeting I went to, they were all chatting away. And I thought about these things on language. How can I make a contribution that's positive? And I was sitting there thinking, shall I say, I know this might be a stupid question, but no, I can't say that because it's like, putting myself down. And there was a glaring error. And I just said, this seems obvious to me, but shouldn't we be doing X, Y, or Z? And when we came out of the board meeting, the chairman, who was a really nice guy, said to me, he said, I'm really glad you said that because no one else was prepared to. But the reason why I said it, one was because I wanted to make a positive contribution. I wanted to appear strong. It was a numerical issue, and I made a point of doing that. I wasn't going to make my first boardroom comment to be about fluff. Oh, God, I haven't got 1 minute remaining. Oops. Oh, dear. Right. Okay, so that's about language. Actions. Do everything quickly. Make sure you listen. Someone said to me, how do you make an impact in, when you're talking to executives, how do you really, how do you deal with strong men and how do you deal with men in positions of power? I said, it's really easy. You ask one question and you listen for 45 minutes. And then what you do is, because you really listen, you can pick out points and feedback information, and particularly because it's mainly their views, they think you're incredibly insightful. But one of the things that you have to do about your question positively, always think about the fact that when you're communicating, and whether this is fair or not, it's fact. A female that questions a strategy or a business question is always going to be viewed as emotional. You can argue whether it's fair or not. It's pointless arguing. Just know it and therefore make sure you don't do it. And it's really, really simple, and it can be done very easily. But take accountability for what you do. Don't put your head down. Don't say, I'm just going to crack on and get on with this, and if they're going to fight the politics, I'll let them get on with it, and then suddenly say, how come they're all earning more than me? How did that happen? Take accountability, own your involvement, and communicate your success. Don't let someone else take the praise for something that's your IP. You're wasting your time if you do. You take up some of these you take up some of these actions and they will turn into habits. The more habitual your behaviour is, the more habitual your language is, if you've thought it through, you're using the language, you're taking the actions, they will become habits. Habits then create authenticity. They create your brand PR. If someone in your own mind, if someone said to you right now, who are you and what do you do, would you be able to have a really bold statement as a response? If you haven't, leave here today and work one out. Let who you are and the definition, if you like, of your two-line bio that defines you, let that be known to everybody that you meet. But include a bit of ambition in there, and that might really help. Okay, 2 secs. Results. The most important thing is it should be steady progression. We were talking about this earlier. It isn't a linear thing. If you take an escalator, it's a really quick way down. Plan it so that as your life cycle changes, so when girls leave school, they're going to have different career ambitions to when they're in the mid-20s, to when they're in the mid-30s, to when they're hitting their 50s. Because your life will change. You're juggling different priorities, you're juggling different things. Don't say, I'm going to be X, and just keep that one linear path, because you will have to have different decisions to make at each lifestyle. It's really important not to put yourself under that pressure. Plan it, know when you get there, and review it. And when you go through that cycle, you need to think again. Thank you very much.